Well, welcome back to our series of algebra videos. Today we'll be doing lesson 3, adding real numbers and adding negative numbers, kind of the same thing. These lessons coincide with Algebra 1 or beginning algebra. Let's work with the first example, example 1. Say we have a positive value 1 plus a negative 3. How would you determine the sign at the very end? So if we are adding these together, what would be the value? So let's start at positive 1. Let's draw a number line and work our way to negative because we're adding negative 3. Let's go 3 places over. 1, 2, 3. We end up at negative 2. So our final value would be negative 2. So if you added a positive 1 to a negative 3, you end up with negative 2. Alright, let's do another one. Example 2, if we have a negative 3 plus a negative 1, we draw a number line. We can start at negative 3 or negative 1, depending on where you want to. It doesn't matter. You end up in the same place. So we'll just start at negative 1 and work our way more negative because we're adding a negative number. Depending on where you're going, depending on what you add. So if you add a positive number, you go more positive or in the direction of more of the positive direction. If you're adding a negative number, you go more negative. So start with any value and add a positive number depending on the equation, or add a negative number depending on the equation. So let's start at negative 1. Work our way down. So we're going down negative 3. So we have to go down 3 places. We have to go down 3 places. So negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. So we have 1, 2, 3. We end up at negative 4. Let's move on. Let's do example number 3. Say we have negative 6 plus 10. Let's draw our number line. Well, we can start at negative 6 or positive 10, depending on which way you want to do, but make sure you're going in the right direction. If you do negative 6, you need to count positive because you're adding 10. If you do positive 10, make sure you go in the negative direction because you're adding negative 6. So let's do at negative 6. We count up 10 places. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We end up at 4. So negative 6 plus 10 would be 4. Let's do another one. Negative 3 plus a 0. What does that do? Nothing. Because 0 doesn't really add anything or subtract anything, we're still at negative 3. So let's go over some rules in order to find out what our answers will be. So if we have a big negative value, adding a small positive value, your answer will be negative. If we have a negative number plus a negative number again, so 2 negative numbers, our answer will be negative because you're adding 2 negative numbers together, you're getting more negative. Now if your negative number is small and you're adding a positive value that's big, you will end up getting a positive value. So for an example, we have negative 5 and plus 1, we'll end up with a negative number. And simply just do the subtraction and you end up with negative 4. So 5 minus 1 is 4. But since we have a bigger number that's negative, we'll end up with a negative answer, so negative 4. Say we have 2 negative numbers, we're adding negative 6, negative 3. Well, rule number 2 says we'll get a negative answer. But just add the numbers together like normal and you'll get 9, but your answer will be negative, so it'll be negative 9. Let's do another one. Negative 3 and 5. 5 is a bigger number, which is positive, and 3 is a smaller number, which is negative. Your answer will be a positive value. So let's just do the regular subtraction, and you get 2. Let's review absolute value for example number 5. If you have the absolute value of negative 5, what will you get? Well, you get a positive 5. Same thing applies to negative 3. If you have absolute value of negative 3, you get 3. Absolute value of negative 2, you get 2. Absolute value of 8, positive 8, you get still an 8. Any value that's in the absolute value, you get something positive, even if it's a negative. So if you have a negative x, you will get a positive x. Example number 6. We will try using absolute values in order to simplify adding negatives and positives together in order to determine what your answer will be. This doesn't always make sense, but this is another way of doing it. Say we have a negative 5 plus a negative 7. We can take the absolute values of those numbers, like 5 plus 7, and now just add them together. 5 plus 7 is 12. But since we're adding 2 negative numbers together, you would get a negative 12. It's another way of looking at adding negative numbers together. This only works if both of the values are negative when you're adding them. Otherwise, it just gets complicated. Okay, we're going to throw a big problem out there. Well, we're going to take this one step at a time. Say we have 3 plus negative 1 plus 5 plus 3 plus negative 2 plus negative 3. let us rewrite all of these so it makes it simple. If we have a plus and a negative sign together, it just becomes a negative sign. So let's rewrite this. We have 3 minus 1. If we do that, we get 2. Then bring everything down, we get 2 plus 5 plus 3 plus negative 2 plus negative 3. Now let's do the 2 and the 5 together. We can add those together. We get 7. We can bring down the 3 and bring down the other values for negative 2 and negative 3. Let's add the 7 and the 3 together. We get 10. Bring down the negative 2 and the negative 3. Now we still have those signs again. We have a positive and a negative together. It would just be a negative. So we have 10 minus 2, which would be 8. And now we just have 8 plus negative 3. When we have a positive and a negative together, we just get 8 minus 3, which would be 5. So this complicated problem, we got the answer. It'd be a positive 5. You don't need to put the positive in front of the 5 because leaving it off indicates so. Okay, example number 8. If we have a negative 3 plus a 3, what would that do? We have 3 minus 3 basically, which is 0. Now, when this happens, this is called an additive inverse. These always equal 0. Another example would be negative 5 plus 5. This would be 0. Negative 12 plus 12. This would be 0. Let's change that 0 back into a better one. Say we have 10, we'll do 100 minus 100. Or we can do 100 plus minus, or do a negative 100. So 100 plus negative 100 would be 0 also. Same thing. We'll do 1 half plus a negative 1 half, still be 0. Let's do example number 9. Say we have a negative number and you have another negative value on the outside. All this is doing is multiplying this negative sign to the negative value. When you multiply these two negative values together, you get a positive. So the answer would be a positive 1. Now say we have 3 negative values being multiplied together. So the first two would be a negative times a negative, which would make a positive, times another negative, so a positive times a negative, which would be a negative. So the negative times a negative is a positive. And now you have a negative plus, or we have a negative times a positive. That gives you a negative value. So the answer would be a negative 1. You can write this negative plus value two different ways. A negative plus 1, which would be negative 1. Or you can have a negative 1 just by itself with 1. A negative value on top times a positive 1. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and like our videos. If you have any questions, please comment down below.